Welcome to Infinite Novel. Dive into epic alternate realities. All rights to original creators. Point of no return.
Chapter 22. A Father's Promise. 2 days later, Bulma was standing outside now, peeking into one of the 3 space pods in her half-destroyed backyard. It was the only place to put them so they wouldn't be easily seen by anyone except those with Saiyan blood. Fortunately for Bulma, the Earthlings were all far too preoccupied with the destruction done to Earth during the alien invasion and the epic battle that came along with it. The coast was clear for the Saiyans to depart to Namek without drawing too much attention. Bulma was bent over, half inside the space pod as she double-checked its fuel level, when she heard Goku's voice. Her friend was arguing with Raditz while the two descended down into the backyard with Gohan in tow. "If you didn't look exactly like our father, I would swear that we were not related," Raditz sneered, walking over to a space pod that Bulma wasn't looking at, his brother and nephew on his heels. "But we're not going to do anything but sit inside of these pod things," Goku whined. "Why can't I bring the lunch Chi-Chi made me? This is a mission to restore the lives of people on your planet, not a vacation as we cruise through space. Or are you not interested in gathering the Dragon Balls?" "Of course I'm interested. I'm just hungry." "Your woman already fed us before we came here," Raditz replied, before adding under his breath, "would have never survived working for Freeza, that's for sure." Goku heard his brother and he frowned, falling into silence. The most information he had gotten regarding what things were like for Raditz under Frieza's reign were the glimpses his brother gave him during Vegeta's battle with Freeza. But he had known Raditz now for some time, and he had pieced parts of the puzzle together on his own. He was pleased that Freeza was officially out of the picture, and his brother would never have to go through those things again. "All right," Bulma said, climbing out of the space pod. She patted the top of it in satisfaction, a smug look on her face. "This bad boy's ready to go. I just need to give you guys the communication devices I made, and then that should be it. Remember that any communication devices need to let us establish contact on a planet as far as Namek." Raditz sneered in condescension, opening up the space pod he was going to occupy. "All I did was replicate the communication chip on your scouters, buddy. Don't forget that behind these gorgeous looks is a brilliant mind," Bulma arrogantly informed him. Raditz frowned as Bulma approached them. The heiress handed Goku 3 black headsets with a microphone attached. Raditz snatched one for himself, and Goku handed one to Gohan, who took it like he was handling fragile glass. "I've been working on replicating the communication in Raditz Scouter ever since he got here, so hopefully these things will work. But if they don't, I synced up the communication on your space pod to my own headset here. This way if you guys need anything, you can get a hold of me. You also have my old Dragon Ball Scouter, right?" "Yeah," Goku said with a smile, looking down at his son who was putting on his headset. "Gohan's got it, don't you, son?" "I do. I want to find the Dragon Ball as soon as possible, so I can wish Piccolo back," Gohan proudly announced as Goku put a hand on top of his head. "I'm just impressed that Chi-Chi agreed to let you go," Bulma teased. "You and me both," Raditz mumbled, climbing into his space pod. "Enough with the talk. Let's get a move on." Goku was going to respond, when he suddenly looked back towards the compound, concentration settling into his features. Bulma and Raditz followed his line of sight, only to see Vegeta leaning back against the wall, his arms crossed over his armor with his ankles casually crossed. "Well, what have we here?" Vegeta finally asked out loud, locking eyes with Raditz. "You were all going on a little vacation, and I wasn't invited." "You said you didn't want to come," Raditz countered. When he saw the way Vegeta's eyes darkened with rising anger, Raditz gave a brief nod of respect and quickly spoke before he earned any retaliation. "Apologies, Vegeta. I just thought you said I said to let me know when you would be leaving, didn't I?" Vegeta interrupted. "Well, we're leaving now to Namek, so now you know." Goku cut in before Raditz could answer, immediately drawing Vegeta's attention. Though he was speaking with his usual kind tone, Goku's right hand was clenched into a tight fist out of instinct, his senses on full alert. "Is there anything else you needed, Vegeta?" "Now that you ask, there is indeed something I need," Vegeta responded in a mockingly kind voice. He pushed himself off the wall, walking past them until he slowly started circling the space pod Bulma had been looking at. He examined it carefully. The prince put one gloved hand on the pod, and without looking up, he casually asked, "Do I have your word, Kakarot, that you will do this mission as you claim and wish my son back to life?" Goku and Raditz exchanged a brief look, before the younger brother answered, "We're going to do our best, Vegeta. If we only get one wish, then we're wishing for Piccolo back to restore the Earth's Dragon Balls." The woman already mentioned that, and after some thought, "I think that would make the most sense. But the question is, how can I trust that you will do as you say?" Vegeta casually asked, continuing to circle the space pod. It was in much better condition than the abandoned space pod he had found. Vegeta finally looked back at Goku, distrust darkening his features. "How do I know you're not going to wish for ultimate strength in order to defeat me? My concern right now is wishing everyone back that we've lost," Goku seriously informed him. "All the innocent people that have died here, and all of our friends. We're bringing them all back. Trunks is your son, but he's also Bulma's son and my friend. We're going to wish him back, I guarantee it." Vegeta was silent as he studied the younger Saiyan in front of him, casually drumming his fingers on top of the space pod while he contemplated what to do. Bulma, Raditz, and Gohan were both anxiously looking back and forth between them. The air was tense for time that seemed much longer than it was, until Vegeta finally gave a conceding nod. "Your intentions are true, Kakarot, but the problem is that I'm not sure I trust you to follow through when you're finally asked to make any wish you want." Speaking like this is fine here on your home planet, but when the time comes, will you stand by your words in the face of that temptation? Yes, Goku asserted with a nod. I will. I'm not sure I believe that, Vegeta sneered. I think I need a stronger guarantee than your word. Goku awkwardly scratched the back of his head, frowning in puzzlement. Sure, like what? Vegeta's dark eyes shifted to Bulma briefly, making the heiress shrink back a little behind Goku. The prince then looked over in Gohan's direction. Goku didn't like that one bit, nor did he like the scheming smirk that spread over Vegeta's face. Your son will stay here on this planet while you travel to Namek with your brother, Vegeta announced, looking back up at Goku with a smug look. I will be listening to these communication devices this woman made. You do as you say, and all will be well. You don't do as you say and interfere with bringing my son back, and neither of us will have a son anymore. In a flash, Goku was right in front of the prince, but Vegeta was faster. Goku barely had time to pull back the punch he'd been aiming for Vegeta's jaw, when the prince reappeared right behind Gohan. Goku spun back towards him, his jaw tight with hot fury when Vegeta just laughed. What's the matter, Kakarot? A step too slow, Vegeta taunted, putting his hands casually on Gohan's shoulders from behind. The small boy was trying to look unfazed, but when he saw the looks his father and uncle were both wearing, sweat broke out on his back as he gulped. Vegeta, let him go, Goku ordered, trying hard to restrain himself. He was fast, but not fast enough. He had no way of knowing if Vegeta would hurt his son if he made a move. His fists were tightly clenched, and Raditz stepped closer when he felt his power unconsciously start to rise. I'm not even doing anything to him, nor would I ever do anything to him. I'm fantastic with children, Vegeta innocently responded. His grip gently tightened on Gohan's shoulders, making the boy tense with anticipation and discomfort. If you're that worried about it, you could just come with us. You don't have to do this, Goku barely managed to get out through his grit teeth. Instead of responding, Vegeta briefly glanced over at Bulma, who was warily watching the scene unfolding. She looked like she was ready to run for her life on the drop of a dime if things turned bad and the Saiyans started fighting. Goku followed his line of sight, and his features softened in realization. You want to be here when Trunks is revived. And if we can only bring Piccolo back, then you want to be here to get the Dragon Balls with Bulma to revive him, Goku reasoned out loud. Vegeta blinked once, before his temper snapped and he snarled, my reasons are mine, fool. I don't have to explain what I do to anybody. It's simple, Kakarot. My son lives, or no one's son on this fucking planet lives. I already told you, we're going to get this done, Goku growled. You have to trust us. I trust no one, Vegeta growled back. They fell into another tense silence. Gohan was trying not to squirm out of Vegeta's hard grip on his shoulders, which was becoming increasingly more painful as each moment slipped by. Goku tried getting a read on the prince, but it was difficult. Not to mention, it was hard to stay unbiased when his young son was blatantly being used as some kind of hostage. He wasn't afraid of fighting Vegeta, but he was wary of the tactics the prince would use, especially with Gohan there in the middle of it. Sensing his indecision, Vegeta roughly threw Gohan away from him, forcing the boy to crash into the grass. Gohan immediately scrambled up to his feet and ran over to stand next to his father. The boy stays here. You just do as you say you will, Kakarot, and the boy will be fine. Goku was shaking his head, unwilling to be parted from his son, when Gohan tugged on his pants, drawing his attention. It's okay, Dad. I can stay here, Gohan whispered. His father shifted uncomfortably as his eyebrows drew together. What about wishing Piccolo back, he quietly asked. You'll wish him back, I know you will, Gohan confidently said. Besides, if I'm here, then I can see him as soon as he's wished back. We'll be okay here. It's settled then, Vegeta announced. Since you and your brother are both idiots, Kakarot, you'll both have to go to ensure this gets done. The rest of us will wait here. Now stop wasting time. Get on with it. Goku and Raditz exchanged another look, and with Raditz silently reassuring his younger brother that going along with Vegeta's plan would be the best course of action, Goku gave a conceding nod. Alright, but I'll be checking in often. You're smarter than you look, Vegeta said with a smirk. He watched with avid interest as the two Saiyans climbed into their space pods. Bulma gave everything a last look, doing her best to ignore the prince who was watching every last detail. She shook her head when she checked the fuel in Goku's space pod one last time. I told you, she whispered to him. Yeah, Goku forced a quiet laugh. But he's just doing what he thinks is best. He's insane, Bulma mumbled under her breath. Gotta show him trust eventually. Goku paused, before leaning closer to her and whispering, hey, keep an eye on Gohan for me, will you? I don't want Vegeta baiting him into a fight. I will. She finally took a step back as Gohan approached his father to say goodbye. The heiress was so preoccupied with watching them, that she didn't feel Vegeta standing right behind her. The prince cocked his head to one side, observing father and son while they had a last exchange. I've never claimed to be sane, female, he gruffly said, startling Bulma as she jumped. Awkwardly, she took a few quick steps away from him, making Vegeta flash her a satisfied smirk over her clear discomfort near him. But I can't kill you and then wish my son back to life. Something tells me he wouldn't be very happy if I did that. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Bulma shot at him, unwilling to be cowed by the Saiyan. She missed the flash of amusement on his face at her outburst. Is that your cryptic way of telling me that I'm safe from you or something? Slowly, Vegeta came closer to her, circling her. He paused when he was right behind her, and whispered threateningly in her ear, "No one is safe from me, woman. Least of all you. I suggest you remember that." Bulma wasn't quite able to stop the small shudder of fear that ran down her back, but the prince was already off in front of Rated Spacepod while they also had some last words. She glared daggers into his back for a moment, before thanking the heavens above that it would only take 2 days for the spacepods to reach Namek. They were going to be a very long 2 days. The first day passed without incident. After Goku and Raditz departed, Vegeta departed as well, going somewhere else on the planet and keeping his key down so Gohan couldn't track him. The boy decided to stay with Bulma and help her, since his mother thought he was off planet anyways. Though Gohan didn't say anything, he wasn't comfortable with how Vegeta talked to Bulma. Though he had no hope of beating Vegeta in a fight, at least he stood a much better chance than Bulma did. Gohan was sitting cross-legged on the floor of a makeshift lab, watching Bulma as she sat inside the spacepod that should have been his. She looked focused as she altered the controls, and though she tried to keep her words under her breath, his sensitive hearing could pick up her occasional cursing. While his parents never cursed around him, Raditz did without hesitation, uncaring of his nephew's age. He was used to it by now. "Do you think they made it to Namek yet?" he finally ventured. "We talked to your dad and your uncle a few hours ago, Gohan. They still have a ways to go," Bulma absent-mindedly answered. Gohan cradled his chin in his hand, trying to peek into the spacepod. "Do you think Vegeta is going to Namek after we wish Trunks back to life?" "I have no idea," Bulma sighed. "All he said was he wanted access to the reserve fuel on this spacepod. I didn't even know there was reserve fuel, so it's just tons of fun trying to figure out how to get access to it. You didn't do that for my dad and Raditz though. There was enough fuel in their pods to make the trip to Namek and back. So I guess Vegeta's going far away." "Man, I sure hope so," Bulma grumbled under her breath. "Maybe he has a home in space somewhere. He's a prince, so I bet it's a big home." Bulma stayed silent, though her mind was going back to the deep scars that marred Vegeta's back. All of that coupled with his violent and distrustful nature made her think he didn't have a home in space. At least, not a good one. For a brief second, she felt another wave of pity for the prince, but she forced the feeling away. Instead, she wondered exactly where he was going. It was clear he had no intention of staying on Earth long-term, if his order for her to repair the last remaining spacepod was any indication. Gohan was absently staring off into the distance, listening to the sounds of sirens as the Earthlings tried to repair the massive damage done to their planet, when he caught sight of something in the sky. He barely had enough time to scramble up to his feet before the glass window practically exploded, startling him and Bulma both. By the time Bulma got out of the spacepod to see what the hell was going on, Vegeta was already standing in the room with them. The prince was wearing a cold look in his eyes, but it was the blood on his armor that was drawing the horrified attention of both Gohan and Bulma. "I was hungry, so I went hunting some of the pathetic animals on this planet. The deal has not been broken," Vegeta sneered, irritated by the looks on their faces. "Rest assured, if people are going to die by my hand, I will start with one of you." "Yeah, that's reassuring," Bulma whispered, looking over the blood again. She had no way of knowing if he was telling the truth, and she didn't want to dwell on it. "Thanks for breaking my window, by the way. With all the other damage to my home, I really appreciated that extra touch," she added sarcastically. "My pleasure. Perhaps next time I could break your neck too." Gohan awkwardly cleared his throat, and kindly volunteered, "Hey Vegeta, if you're ever hungry, I can get some food for you. You don't always have to hunt if you don't want to." Vegeta shifted his gaze to Gohan, and he snorted in disgust. "A true Saiyan lives for the hunt. You wouldn't know anything about that, half-breed. Look, did you want anything, or are you just here to bully a little kid?" Bulma angrily interrupted. "Because if you don't mind, I was busy trying to figure out how to access the reserve fuel on this spacepod. I figure the sooner I get that done, the sooner you can leave for good." "I need my scouter," the prince responded, turning his intimidating gaze back towards the woman in the room. "You have it, so get it for me immediately." "Why in the hell would I have your damn scouter? I've never even seen you wear a scouter-Raditz green scouter." Vegeta barked in agitation. "His scouter is actually mine, and I want it back, now. Don't make me tell you again, female," he snarled in warning as white key snapped up between his fingers in his rising anger. All right, Bulma conceded, not missing the sparks of light in his hand. "I didn't know it was yours, okay? It's in the other lab. I'll get it for you." "That's better," Vegeta harshly snapped. He clenched his fist and the light disappeared, to Bulma and Gohan's relief. The two exchanged a wary glance before Bulma turned around and headed out. Vegeta walked after her, and gave Gohan a pointed look when the boy started to follow him. Gohan stopped right where he was, letting the adults leave. A few moments later, Bulma was digging through a box for the discarded scouter. It took a little more time than she would have liked, but she finally found it. She inspected it and turned it on just to make sure, but it seemed to be working fine. "Okay, here," she said, turning back around. "It looks like it's running." Her voice trailed off when she realized she was alone in the lab. Bulma blinked, before stepping back out into the hallway. She glanced back down towards the lab with the spacepod, and saw Gohan peeking out. The little boy pointed, and she looked the other way. Sure enough, Vegeta was down at the opposite end of the hallway. Vegeta was standing outside of the door to the room where his son's body was. He was peering in through the small glass rectangle. He had known Trunks' body was there, but it was only now that he decided to take a look for himself. The woman had cleaned his body of the blood and covered the fatal wound on his chest, but that didn't rid the images from Vegeta's mind. Mixed emotions that he couldn't identify ran through him, and for the moment, he completely forgot about what he was planning to do. All he could think of was that he missed his son, and it hadn't even been that long since he had died. How the hell was it going to feel when the boy went back to his proper timeline? He had no idea how time travel worked. Would he ever see him again? Hey, I got you your scouter, Bulma softly said when Vegeta didn't acknowledge her presence. She was right next to him, studying his profile intently. The prince looked over at her, his eyes lowering to the scouter in her hands. Bulma was braced for more of his morbid threats or borderline sadistic sarcasm, but to her surprise, Vegeta only offered a nod of acceptance before taking the scouter from her hands. He then turned his attention forward again, falling deep into thought again. The rigid and hard edge to his features didn't seem so rigid and hard now, with the way he was staring into the room at his son. It was still nearly impossible to get a read on him, but there was a hint of emotion in his eyes that he couldn't quite hide. For the first time, Bulma didn't see him as a heinous cold-blooded monster. In this moment, he was just a father who cared about his son. She studied him for a few moments longer, before looking forward and following his line of sight. "Do you want to go in?" Vegeta looked back at her, and they made eye contact. His eyebrows drew together in a mixture of distrust and confusion. There was a thick tension in the air as they both studied each other's eyes for a moment. Two strangers who were complete opposites, from completely different worlds, destined to be lovers and parents. Neither said anything as they each really took the other in for the first time, but the moment was fleeting. Vegeta's features regained their harsh edge before he looked away first, raising up the scouter and slipping it on. "Get back to work on that space pod," he ordered in cold detachment. Without waiting for a response or a look back, he turned around and walked away. Bulma released a deep breath, hearing another window shatter. "Figures," she mumbled, shaking her head as she headed back towards her lab. She was already off Vegeta's mind when he climbed out of another window to stand outside. He had bigger things to plan as he activated his scouter. The prince put in some old familiar coordinates and watched as the scouter tried making a connection. He waited 5 seconds, then 10, then 30, before cursing heatedly in an alien language. His scouter hadn't been used in some time, and with the woman constantly opening and looking at it, his immediate conclusion was that she had damaged the communication system. Vegeta was just reaching up to take off the scouter when it beeped, and the live transmission was picked up. "Vegeta," a wary voice answered. "Did you miss me? This can't be, you're not supposed to be alive." Vegeta laughed. "Such little faith in me, Kui. Where is Freeza? We've been trying to contact him and Cooler, and we're not getting through. They're both dead." The prince paused to hear a reaction, but when all he got was silence, he arrogantly added, "I killed Freeza myself." "You lie," Kui hissed. "You're not strong enough. You don't have to believe me. But you know damn well what's going to happen without the Cold family to run things. Once word gets out, the servant planets will rise up and rebel against the surviving soldiers in the Empire. Someone will be foolish enough to try to rule and gain control, and soldiers will take sides, making your deaths come even faster. In essence, I'm talking to a dead man. Why are you telling me this? Because I gave serious thought into killing you all myself. But I've decided not to, since you could still be useful. So if you want to live, you'll do exactly as I say. We have 6 Dragon Balls now. Everyone here is so nice. Raditz is tracking down the 7th one right now. I'm flying to see the eldest Namek so I can get the Paso crap. Did I already come this way? Everything here looks the same. Gaku, Bulma interrupted, turning up the volume on her end. You're going to see the eldest Namek for what? Well, we can't use these Dragon Balls until we have a password. A password? Seriously? Yeah, that's what they told us. Oh, and guess what? We get 3 wishes instead of 1. Really? That's great. Bulma brightly responded, smiling her first genuine smile in a long time. Yeah, so I was thinking we could wish Piccolo and Trunks back to life. I don't know about the 3rd wish though. We'll think of something, don't worry about it. Okay, how's Gohan doing? Oh, he's good. No, he's great, Bulma said, forcing a laugh. Alright, well, get in touch when you're ready to make a wish. Talk to you then. Bulma then cut off the communication before Gaku could respond, before sliding her headset off. She took a deep breath, hoping that the Saiyans on Namek could get things done fast. Things had taken longer than she thought, due to them getting derailed on an imposter Namek planet. 5 long days had passed since their departure, and she felt like Vegeta was a ticking time bomb. Every day, the prince was growing more restless and paranoid that Gaku and Raditz were secretly plotting something. While he hadn't put his hands on her, he had taken Gohan as his unofficial sparring partner 2 days ago to pass the time. Their sessions were growing more violent each time, and she wasn't sure that he wouldn't accidentally kill the boy during one of them. When she heard Vegeta's mocking laughter, Bulma looked outside. Gohan looked visibly exhausted as he sported a black eye and blood on his face. Vegeta was standing in front of him with a smirk on his face, arms crossed securely over his chest, a challenging look in his eyes. What a bully, Bulma mused angrily, watching as Gohan tried in vain to fight back. Past attempts to make Vegeta stop had only resulted in him being harder on Gohan, and so like the genius she was, Bulma had come up with a new solution to force him to stop beating up on her best friend's son, catering. Some time later, Vegeta stared at the massive spread of food in front of him with apprehension. Gohan was bruised and bandaged up, but that was doing nothing to stop him from inhaling as much food as he could. Vegeta watched him and then suspiciously poked at some of the chicken. It smelled damn good, but he still didn't trust the woman not to have slipped something into it. Bulma knew exactly what he was thinking, and she rolled her eyes. This was less of a peace offering and more of her running out of options on how to stop him from fighting with Gohan, since she didn't trust him not to kill the boy. From her experiences with Goku, Gohan, and Raditz, she knew for a fact that Vegeta was hungry, likely starving if Raditz's first meal on Earth had been any indication. But still, he sniffed, poked, and prodded, too stubborn to try anything. "Oh, would you just eat the damn food already?" Bulma finally snapped, startling Vegeta and Gohan both as they looked over at her. "I didn't just order all this for Gohan, you know. Not a lot of people are catering meal sizes this big with most of West City destroyed." Bulma's ranting ended with a shriek when part of the wall next to her exploded. She instinctively ducked and covered her head, and when all the debris settled, glanced up to see Vegeta pointing a finger in her direction. "Remember who you're fucking talking to, wench. I'll eat when I choose and not a moment sooner," Vegeta sneered. His eyes shifted over to Gohan, who was scowling at him. "What the hell are you looking at, brat?" he snapped. "Nothing," Gohan quietly answered, lowering his eyes back to his food. Before he could finish his current plate, it was swiped by Vegeta. The prince sniffed it and then figured that the woman wouldn't dare poison the boy. He ventured a small taste. 5 minutes later, Bulma and Gohan were both staring at Vegeta while he ate like he had never had a decent meal in his life. The two exchanged a look of surprise, but before either of them could do anything else, Bulma's headset cackled to life. Bulma immediately got up to her feet, turning it on. "Hello, hey, Bulma, hey Goku, how are things going?" Bulma asked in relief. She turned away from Vegeta and Gohan, who were both giving her their full attention. "It's what? What's huge? You're breaking up. The dragon is huge? You've already summoned the dragon, that's fantastic." Vegeta was at her side in a heartbeat. Without any tact, he yanked the headset off her head, making her yelp when her hair got caught in it. He turned away as he slipped it on, ignoring Bulma cursing. "Kakarot? What is going on? Tell me, now." "Vegeta, we've summoned the dragon. We're ready to start making our wishes," Goku informed him enthusiastically, briefly forgetting his resentment towards Vegeta for keeping Gohan on Earth. The chance to start fixing some damage had finally arrived, and he was eager to start. "Wishes?" Vegeta asked in surprise. "I thought it was only one dash," he snarled in surprise when Bulma roughly yanked the headset off him. Spinning towards her, he was instinctively pulling his hand back to strike her down, but Bulma quickly activated a speaker on the headset. "Saying we get 3 wishes," Goku's voice came through. Vegeta gave Bulma a cold glare which she ignored as Gohan ran up to them to hear better. "Dad, you made it," he excitedly shouted. "I sure did, and we're about to wish Piccolo back right now." "Then you're going to wish Trunks back," Vegeta ordered. "Then we're going to wish Trunks back," Goku affirmed. Vegeta, Bulma, and Gohan all leaned in closer as they heard someone begin speaking in the background, in a language none of them understood. As the words went on, more and more static started being heard. "Damn woman, can't you build anything right?" Vegeta angrily demanded. "The dragon is granting a wish, what do you expect?" Bulma shot back. The prince went to respond, but then he and Gohan both suddenly looked off towards the distance. They both felt it right away. A strong power level that could only belong to one being. "That's Piccolo!" Gohan screamed in joy. Before Vegeta or Bulma could even get out a word, the boy's aura ruptured around him, and then he took off into the sky, flying straight towards the power level he was sensing. "So, it really does work," Vegeta whispered under his breath. He glanced back towards the building Bulma was already heading into. The heiress paused and looked back at him, and they made eye contact. "Well, what the hell are you waiting for? Do you want to see your son or not?" she yelled at him. Vegeta's upper lip curled back threateningly, but now wasn't the time. Trunks was going to finally be wished back, and that was all that mattered. Without a word, he followed her inside. Wishing someone back from the dead was something he had to see, especially when that someone was his son. "Dende's wishing Trunks back now." Goku's voice came over through the static on Bulma's headset right as Bulma and Vegeta both went into the room where Trunks' body was. "Okay," Bulma eagerly replied. Vegeta stopped a good 5 feet away, watching as Bulma got closer to him. She covered Trunks' hand gently with her own, and then they both waited. Trunks' pale skin gained its color back first, and Vegeta took a step closer when he felt a brief flicker of his ki. He and Bulma were both startled when Trunks suddenly sat straight up, gasping in a lungful of air while he blinked rapidly. The Saiyan hybrid glanced around, half expecting to still be in the middle of a battlefield. He looked down and removed the bandages on his chest, and the only sign of the fatal ki blast was a faint scar. Trunks looked up and his eyes settled on his mother, who instantly wrapped him in a tight hug. "Trunks, thank goodness, you're back. How do you feel? Are you okay?" Bulma asked worriedly, pulling back and examining him closely. Yeah, I think so. I feel kinda weird but I think I'm fine," Trunks said, blinking a few times in surprise. He gingerly shifted over, and then stood up, looking down at his hands briefly. When he looked up, he finally made eye contact with Vegeta. He offered him a smile. Vegeta offered him a nod of acknowledgement, fighting the smile creeping on his own face. Without a word, he closed his eyes and projected to Trunks everything he had missed, from his emotional reaction to Trunks' death, to the moment he entered the room they were now standing in. He didn't spare a single detail, showing it all from his perspective. Trunks stood, stunned, as the images raced through his mind. Vegeta finally opened his eyes again, closing out of the projection. Whoa, Trunks whispered, overwhelmed by everything he had seen. He almost felt like sitting down again. He settled for leaning back against the examination table while he shook his head. I missed a lot. Just a thing or two. Trunks looked back up. You ascended. Not how I wanted, but I did. Trunks thought of what to say, but he didn't have the right words. His whole life he had missed a father he had never known, craving respect and acceptance from a man who could never show up to give it to him. Until now. It was all he ever wanted, even if he had gone through hell to get there. Father and son shared a silent moment of mutual respect and understanding, a moment that was broken by Vegeta snorting and crossing his arms over his chest as he looked away. Told you to always watch your back, kid. You wouldn't have died if you had. Yeah, Trunks laughed a little. I have to work on that, I guess. Hey guys, we still have a last wish. Gaku's voice came through on the headset in Bulma's hands, snapping her attention from the two men in the room with her. Oh, right. Well, I'm not sure. What do you think, Trunks? Bulma asked, glancing back towards her son. Do you think we could try to find your broken capsule? Or maybe the antidote for Gaku? I need to go back to my timeline, Trunks immediately answered as he straightened. You made a prototype of the time machine in my timeline. If we can fix that, then I can come back and bring Gaku's antidote back like I was originally supposed to. There's one problem with that, Vegeta cut in, looking at his son intensely. You don't know if the female will still be alive when you go back. If she's not, then you won't ever time travel again. Trunks frowned and looked away, not wanting to think about that. I don't know. I'll figure it out either way. Doesn't matter how long it takes. I'll come back. Are you sure this is what you want, Trunks? Bulma pressed. What if you can't come back to this timeline, and you can only go back to the past from your timeline? I'm sorry, that's just a risk I'm going to have to take. So are we going to wish Trunks back to his timeline then or what? The dragon says he can do it, but you have to make up your damn minds. Raditz cut in through the headset. This dragon is getting impatient. Alright, Trunks said, a hard look of determination coming over his features. I'm going back. Okay, just give us 1 minute before you make that wish. Buy us a little time. Bulma ordered into the headset. She then handed it to Trunks, and promptly raced out of the room while yelling, you need your sword. And I'm getting you a clean Capsule Corp shirt. Vegeta kept his eyes on the headset, vaguely listening to Gaku and Raditz in their lame attempts to stall the Namekian dragon. Trunks was the one who broke the silence first, covering the headset microphone with one hand. So I guess I'm not the only one who is leaving, Trunks said, disappointment ringing loud and clear. His father looked back up at him. Ruling is what I was meant to do. No, it's not. You're supposed to be here. This is your fight. It's not. This isn't my home, but it's my home. Vegeta scowled and looked away. I don't know what you want me to say, Trunks. Suddenly, Trunks was right in front of him. Vegeta had no choice but to look him right in the eye. The boy was getting pissed, and Vegeta felt oddly uncomfortable with that. Trunks was leaving, and he didn't want to have him leaving while angry with him. You know why I tried so hard not to tell you the truth? Because I knew this is what you would do. If you didn't know who I was, or who Bulma was going to be in your life, you wouldn't be going anywhere. You're avoiding what you would have done, running away from it. It's not that, Vegeta snapped. You don't understand. I have a responsibility. To me, Trunks roughly interrupted, poking his father in the chest. You're my father and you have a responsibility to me. I've never asked you for anything, and I swear that I never will again, but I need you to do this for me. Go into space and rule, I don't care, but if you give a damn about me then please, come back and finish what you started in my timeline. If not for yourself, then for me. Vegeta and Trunks stared each other down for a few tense seconds, neither willing to budge. Trunks felt a headache coming on from his stress. He had the opportunity to go home, but if his father didn't help against the androids, then they weren't going to win, and leaving without knowing one way or the other would kill him. He felt his frustration with Vegeta rising when the silence stretched on, and he was about to explode and start ranting in his father's face out of desperation, when Vegeta broke their eye contact. Alright, the prince relented. I'll come back and I'll take care of the androids myself. His son blinked as anger washed away, with hope replacing it. Really? Vegeta rolled his eyes a little. You heard what I said, Trunks. I'll be here. Trunks smiled. Thank you. You won't be born though. That female is absolutely insufferable, Vegeta grumbled. Can't have it all, I guess. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. It just took a while to find a clean shirt that is in your size. At least, I think it's in your size, Bulma said in a rush breath, holding a white t-shirt out as though inspecting its size. She went right up to Trunks and pressed the shirt up against his shoulders, looking it over. Yeah, this should fit, I think. Okay, and here's your sword. I had it cleaned because there was so much blood on it, including your father's blood, and who knows what kind of diseases he is, she snidely added, purposely ignoring the third person in the room. Vegeta growled low in his throat, his ki beginning to rise. Trunks looked anxiously back and forth between his parents while he tugged the white Capsule Corp t-shirt on. While in the afterlife, he had hoped they could come to a mutual understanding. It looked to him like it was wishful thinking. Well, I think that's everything, Trunks finally said, slinging his sword holster over his shoulder. Bulma passed him a short black hairband in exchange for the headset, watching him swiftly tie his lavender hair back into a ponytail. And please try not to kill each other. I'd like to see you both again when I come back. Don't worry about us, you just be careful, Bulma told him, kissing his cheek. Trunks nodded, looking back at Vegeta. Father. The prince raised 2 fingers in a silent salute, and Trunks returned the gesture as Vegeta's promise was silently sealed. Then, just like that, Trunks was gone. Vegeta slowly opened his eyes several days later, looking through the gas in his space pod. The lights were flashing on his green scouter, signaling arrival to the planet of his choice, a planet light years away from Earth. A moment later, and the space pod latch opened up. Vegeta stepped out, and was greeted by Kui. Behind Kui stood a row of soldiers, all wearing the standard scouter and armor combination. The prince barely gave them a glance, before turning and walking over towards the base, with all of them following closely behind him. As he did, he disactivated his scouter, and then raised his ki until it shattered everyone's scouters behind him. Vegeta heard the shocked gasps, and he smirked in satisfaction. There was something so rewarding about having Frieza's men fearing him now. That was part of the reason he was sparing their lives, for the time being. In a few days' time, he would begin weeding out longtime enemies and rivals as he built his forces from the ground up. But until then, he would enjoy their terror. Especially Kui's. You gathered everyone as I asked, Kui. Why yes, Vegeta, Kui weakly answered, still floored by the 6-digit reading Vegeta had effortlessly registered on his scouter. That's Lord Vegeta to you, came the threatening reply. Yes, Lord Vegeta. Better, the prince gruffly replied as he stepped inside the base. There were 2 young boys there at the entrance waiting for him, barely older than Gohan. They had a brand new uniform set for him to wear. Vegeta paused and looked them over, before turning his now ice-cold glare to Kui. I said no children. I thought I was clear. Apologies, Lord Vegeta. I thought I had gotten rid of all of them. Vegeta's glare was unwavering, and Kui had to fight not to shrink back. In some ways, he was more afraid of Vegeta now than he had been of Freeza before. Freeza had been largely indifferent to him and his existence, barely even knowing his name. But he and Vegeta had bad blood that ran back to when they were boys. That had been fine with him when their power difference was negligible. But now, he had a feeling he wouldn't be living very long. Finally, Vegeta shifted his gaze to one of the men behind Kui. You. I don't know your name, nor do I care to know it. Send these 2 brats back to their true planets. If it doesn't exist anymore, send them to a friendly planet. Just get them the hell out of my sight, now. Yes, Lord Vegeta, the soldier obediently said with a nod. Vegeta snatched up his new uniform and new set of armor from the boys, before gesturing with his head for them to leave. As soon as they did, Vegeta spun around and violently shoved Kui against the wall, gripping him by the throat. He leaned in close to his old rival's face as he sneered, I already told you. Freeza might have used child soldiers, but I have no use for them. I'm no one's trainer or guardian. I want an army of men already experienced in battle. If I see one more child wearing armor, I will have your head on a stick and put it on display. Am I clear? Yes, Kui gasped, struggling to breathe. Am I clear? Yes. Vegeta released him, watching with expressionless eyes as Kui slid down the wall, coughing and wheezing for air. He then gestured for all of them to leave. Go. You know what to do, he ordered. The soldiers all nodded and left, with Kui scrambling up and following after them. Left alone for the time being, Vegeta started to get undressed right where he was. He peeled off a glove, and where he used to carry the old broken piece of his armor, he now had a small piece of white paper. Slowly unfolding it, he read the blue ink that showcased Bulma's handwriting. It had the date that the androids would arrive on Earth. Underneath that, he had written the translation, with some assistance from Raditz, into time units he could understand. He stared at the paper for a long time, his thoughts going to his son as he wondered how things were going for him. He missed the kid more than he could ever articulate. But there was no time to dwell though. Tucking the small paper into his new set of gloves, a reminder of a promise he was fully intending to keep, Vegeta turned his attention to the business at hand. He slipped on a brand new set of white armor, complete with a crimson cape attached to it. Adjusting his scouter, he then left towards the hundreds of key signatures he was sensing outside. The remaining soldiers of the Cold Empire were gathered and waiting. It was time they found out just who their new leader was. Trunks was enveloped in blinding white light, forcing him to stagger backwards. As soon as it came, it was gone. Disoriented, he shook the dizziness away. He looked around and saw that his parents were gone. It was dark, and for a moment, his stomach tied up in knots as he had the panic thought that he was again in the wrong time. He was in some kind of barren room that looked abandoned. His blue eyes finally focused and he jogged over to the only door he could see. When he opened it, he immediately recognized the hallway he was in. He was home. This was Capsule Corp, but at the time, it wasn't. These were the downstairs labs that his mother had tried her best to keep intact and updated, but they looked abandoned. Mom, Trunks worriedly called out. He reached up behind him, drawing out his sword as he slowly stepped out of the room. Mom, he called out, louder this time. Trunks tried sensing her low key, but he couldn't sense anything. Panic started rising up until it was right in his throat, making him feel sick. Was he too late? He couldn't have been. Trunks started running, desperately searching for Bulma. Finally, he found a staircase and raced upstairs. As soon as he opened the door, though, there was an enormous explosion. Before he could do anything about it, it forced Trunks backwards as he tumbled down the stairs. He managed to stop halfway, wincing as his sword continued flying past him down the stairs. Trunks was awkwardly lying upside down on the stairs, but he slowly pulled himself up, only to see an enormous metallic monster standing at the doorway, blocking his only exit. Trunks' eyes widened in shock. That wasn't an android. What the hell was it? Right as he was about to raise his hand and fire an attack, the metallic monster's head slowly lifted up and then flipped off. A very familiar wave of hair appeared as Bulma poked her head out. "Trunks," she whispered, looking down at him. Trunks turned around and regained his balance on the stairs, peering up at his mother as they shared the same look of shock. "Mom, oh my god." "Trunks," Bulma screamed. In seconds, the enormous robotic body of armor around her disappeared, a capsule in its place. She forgot all about it as she went downstairs while Trunks ran upstairs, and the two met in a tight hug somewhere in the middle. Bulma was already in tears before she had even reached him. "Oh Trunks, I thought something bad had happened to you." "It's okay. I'm here, and I'm alive. Though you almost killed me just now, I'm alright," Trunks laughed. "Oh honey, I'm sorry. I just thought it's alright. You were defending yourself. Not bad, might I add." "Well, you know me," Bulma laughed, finally letting him go. She looked him over as she gently rubbed his shoulders. "Wow, look at you, son. You've changed. You've grown so much." "Thanks," Trunks mumbled, frowning as he looked at his mother. She looked like she had aged 10 years since he'd last seen her. There were new, worried wrinkles, and white hair that hadn't been there before. A wave of guilt over how much she had probably stressed over him rushed up, and Trunks hugged her tightly again. "I swear, I tried to come back sooner it was my fault. The time was wrong. I didn't double check it. I'm so sorry." "Yeah, well, I fucked things up Trunks," Bulma blinked in surprise. "Since when do you curse in front of me?" "Oh, sorry. Dad and I spent a lot of time together." "A lot of time." Clearly, Bulma laughed a little. "Come on, let's go upstairs. You have to tell me everything." And he did. It took a while for him to tell her the entire story. Throughout the whole time, Bulma made them tea, and then sat down and listened. She said nothing, but he saw how tight her grip was on her tea mug. Even when he glossed over the worst details, he could tell that she knew the truth. When he was done, Bulma told her story of what had happened in his absence. There weren't many humans left on the planet, and she was hardly ever at Capsule Corp anymore except to cleverly store supplies with the capsules. The androids were hunting for her to stop her from developing weapons for the surviving humans. She had only come in that day to retrieve some food capsules. "Well," Trunks finally said when she had finished, "I think I can solve your problem. I'm much stronger than I was before I left. I can take them out now, no problem. I think I can solve your problem too. We have more of that heart virus antidote for Goku." "The time machine though." Bulma sighed, raising the mug of tea for a drink. "Do you still have the first prototype?" Trunks asked hopefully. "I do, but it needs a lot of work. I already know what needs to be done, but I need supplies and time. It might take me about 6 months to really get it to a point where we could test it, and that's best case scenario." "That's fine. Do you know if I'll go back to the timeline I just left? Or if I'll go back to the past for this timeline? This time travel stuff is confusing." "I have no idea, sweetie. I'm sorry." "That's alright. Just kinda want to see my dad again, that's all. Vegeta was so difficult when we first met, and he had already tempered some. I can't even imagine what that was like for you, meeting him before he came to Earth." Trunks nodded slowly, looking down into his tea, a faint smile on his face. "Yeah, he was kind of intense. Almost killed me a couple times. It's alright though. I got to really know him, and it was worth it. I'm glad." Trunks hesitated, swirling his tea a little, before asking, "Do you think, based on what I told you, that you would have given my dad a chance still?" Bulma seriously thought about it, but then she shook her head. "I can't say, Trunks. Everything sounds so different. I don't know if I could have looked past all of that." "Yeah, hey, it's okay. At least you got to know your father." Trunks smiled a little, and then stood up. "Well, I think I'm long overdue for this fight. Will you be alright here?" "I'll be okay. I'll start working on repairing that prototype when you come back. Be careful, okay?" "I will," Trunks answered, already heading outside. He adjusted his sword in his holster and looked off into the distance, taking in the increased damage to his home city. If it was a wreck before, it was hopelessly destroyed now. It would take years to rebuild, but it was time to start. He had spent well over 2 years trying to save the past, and he would get back to that soon. But for now, it was time to start saving the present. CH 22 of 23. Loving this tale? Support Infinite Novel by subscribing for weekly audio adventures. Chapter 23. One chance. When his vision cleared, Trunks hopped to the ground from his time machine. Warily looking around, he tried figuring out where he was this time. There was plenty of barren terrain near him, but finally, he spotted an old discarded water bottle wedged under a rock. For sure then, he was on Earth. Relieved, he finally relaxed a little bit. Trunks then encapsulated his time machine and almost gently put it inside of his leather jacket while he stretched out his senses to pick up someone to talk to. It only took about 10 seconds before he felt something. Turning around, his blue eyes narrowed as he stared off into the distance. He immediately pinpointed Gohan, and Vegeta? He was already back? He wasn't sure that was a good sign. Trunks blinked in surprise, before focusing more. Krillin was there too, as were Piccolo, Yamcha, and Tien. There was no sign of Goku though, but that didn't stop him. Trunks drew out his sword and blasted into the air, flying straight towards them. When he felt all of the power levels slowly begin to drop, Trunks suspected the worst and flew faster. Trunks came to a sudden stop when he felt two new power levels that were very familiar. His grip on his sword handle unconsciously tightened in anger and frustration. Refusing to accept the truth, he quietly descended to the ground and moved on foot with stealth that he had perfected with Vegeta's instruction. Ducking behind a ridge, Trunks peeked around and saw Vegeta quietly scaling a rock wall while suppressing his ki. Trailing him were Piccolo and Tien, with Gohan, Krillin, Bulma, and Yamcha at the bottom. If that wasn't sign enough that he wasn't in the same timeline he had originally traveled to, the fact that he could sense a very powerful Freeza and King Cold up ahead was a dead giveaway. Trunks straightened and then squatted down, a miserable look of defeat on his face. His newly cut lavender hair was hanging in his eyes, the weight of Goku's heart virus antidote heavy in his jacket. This was the time he was always supposed to come back to. His mother had programmed this date again into the time machine, but Trunks had been praying he would go back to the timeline he'd left. Now he was here, and all he wanted to do was leave, just get back into the time machine and try again. Except that wouldn't work. That was another timeline and another piece of time and space, created by his interference, somewhere he couldn't reach anymore. Though he hadn't wished for it, he had at least planned for this outcome. That's why he had 2 vials of antidote in his jacket. And seeing that Piccolo was alive meant that the Dragon Balls were available, he would just sit tight and wait for Goku to arrive. Then he would inform him of the androids, give him 1 vial of the heart antidote, and share his unique predicament with the man who would become his friend in the hyperbolic time chamber. Hopefully then, Goku would understand and help him make a wish to return to the other timeline. Even then, he had no idea if it would work. But it was worth a try. The longer Trunks waited, though, the more anxious he became. Freeza was already here, and Goku was nowhere in sight. He checked his coordinates and his time, and then cursed a little. Goku had been the one to destroy Freeza, but if his information was right, he wasn't due to arrive for another couple of hours. Earth probably didn't have that time. Trunks hesitated only a few seconds before he got back up. Someone had to take care of Freeza, and it looked like it had to be him. After the hell he had gone through in the other timeline thanks to Freeza, he was going to enjoy this. Begin your search, Freeza ordered his men, his reconstructed tail whipping hard against the ground and leaving a crack in it. I want you to find that Saiyan's friends, and then I want you to show them no mercy. The sound of rapid thuds behind him made Freeza pause. He looked behind him, and unconsciously gasped in surprise. All of his men that he'd brought along had been slaughtered in a heartbeat, their dismembered bodies on the ground in cold blood, but he hadn't felt or heard any movement. Stunned, Freeza looked over at his father, who looked equally bewildered. This isn't where I wanted to be, but now that I'm here, I'm going to take care of something I should have finished a long time ago, Freeza. Freeza frantically looked around, taking a step back as he did. Was it the Saiyan he fought on Namek? No, it couldn't be. The voice wasn't the same. But who else would be speaking such bold words to him? Who else had the speed to execute all of his soldiers right under his nose? Freeza! King Cold screamed in pain, drawing his son's attention immediately. Frieza's eyes widened, and he had to blink several times to make sure he was not imagining things. But this was nothing but horrifying reality. That was his father, ruler of the largest empire in existence, the powerful King Cold, helplessly sprawled out on his stomach on the dirt ground. And that was not Goku, who was keeping him pinned there with an immovable boot to the back of his head, along with a sword ruthlessly driven into his father's back like a stake to keep him in place. When Trunks looked up and they made eye contact, Freeza went cold with fear. The boy's hair was a wavy gold, and those teal eyes were the same as Goku's. Freeza nearly stumbled backwards, unable to speak or make a move to help his father, who was writhing in agony on the ground. Do you know what it's like to be forced to watch your father be beaten down right in front of you within an inch of his life, while you couldn't do a damn thing to stop it? Trunks angrily demanded. Freeza took another step back, stuttering for words. That look in Trunks' teal eyes was darker, more murderous than the look Goku had after he killed his short bald friend on Namek. Do you have any idea what it's like waiting for days to see if your father will survive the worst beating of his life? Who the hell are you? Freeza finally demanded. Empowered after finding his voice, he growled and stepped forward, his tail cracking the ground. You fool! You're going to pay dash. No, you and your father are going to pay. You both die, right here, right now, Trunks announced matter-of-factly. He roughly yanked his now bloodied sword out of King Cold, earning a shout of pain from the Lord. That was all he had time to do before Freeza suddenly fired a powerful blast of red ki right at him, causing a massive explosion that could be seen and felt for miles, with Trunks right at the center of it. Not so far away, a group of warriors had to drop to the ground as the pressure wave from the blast struck them a moment later. Whoa! Seems like someone started the party without us, you guys. Krillin yelled, shielding his head from the flying debris. Must be my dad. Gohan yelled back, shielding his eyes as he tried raising his head. No one else would try to fight Freeza alone. Shut up! Vegeta snapped at both of them. Whoever that is over there with Freeza and his father is stronger than Freeza and Kakarot combined, so drop it already. Do you know who it is? Maybe it's someone who came with him from space? Piccolo asked, briefly making eye contact with Vegeta. The prince shook his head. I don't know who could be that strong, but I know for sure it's not Kakarot. If this is you guys trying to be quiet, I'd hate to see you all being loud. A joking voice cut in from behind all of them. All of the warriors spun around in surprise. Trunks was standing there, a hint of a smile on his face. His hair was lavender and his eyes were a clear blue again. There was no sword in his hand, but there was some blood smearing his jacket. He wiped it off casually. Don't worry, I'm not here to hurt any of you. I'm actually just here to talk to Gaku, but he's not going to be here for a couple hours. So I figured I'd take care of Freeza for you guys. Turns out though, that I need a little help to finish him off for good. What do you guys say? Any of you up for it? He was met with suspicious silence while everyone exchanged glances. No one knew who this stranger was, but before anyone could voice otherwise, Trunks made eye contact with Vegeta and smirked. What about you? Trunks asked, tilting his head a little and looking over his father's pink shirt. He had to resist the urge to laugh out loud. You're Vegeta, aren't you? Prince of Saiyans? Everyone looked back at Vegeta, who had a look of wary distrust on his face. He clenched his fists instinctively, drawing back a little as he squared himself for battle. And you know this how? Your reputation precedes you, Trunks said, his smirk spreading into a smile as he echoed the words Vegeta had used a long time ago. Vegeta's glare darkened at that response, but Trunks ignored it as he continued, well, you can help me out, or you can just stay here with the other Earthlings. Your call, Vegeta. Wait, who are Dash? Vegeta started, but Trunks was already flying back over to Frieza's flagship. Vegeta was left stunned, blinking a few times as he tried figuring out what that had been about as everyone gathered closer to him. You don't know him, do you? Piccolo deduced as he studied the prince carefully. Vegeta stayed silent, his mind racing. The way the boy talked to him, with such ease and familiarity, it was as though they had history. Had they met before? He slowly shook his head. No. At least, I don't remember him if we've met before, Vegeta reluctantly admitted. Guys, you feel that? Gohan asked, looking to where Trunks had flown off to. I can barely feel Freeza. I don't think that guy was lying. Yeah, you're right. Krillin chimed in. That other guy he was with is already dead. But that doesn't make sense, Tien added, frowning in thought as he suspiciously looked back towards Vegeta. If this guy's already killed the other powerful alien Freeza came with, and he's already got Freeza down and weakened enough to kill him, then why does he need help? More specifically, why does he need Vegeta's help? Yamcha demanded. Oh, would you guys just knock it off? This isn't some big conspiracy. Bulma snapped at both of them, before looking back at Vegeta and taking in a confused look on his face as he stared into the distance. She gestured towards the prince, look at him. It's obvious that Vegeta doesn't know who that guy is. So drop it, you insecure morons. Yamcha huffed a little, embarrassed with her response, but Vegeta wasn't paying any of them any attention. He was rapidly replaying old missions in his mind, old conversations, trying to figure out where he might have met this boy before. He was so lost in his thoughts that he was visibly startled when Trunks mockingly yelled back at him. Well, what are you waiting for? Don't tell me you're scared. Vegeta grit his teeth angrily as his blue ki exploded brightly around him. Without further hesitation, he took off right after Trunks. Everyone else glanced at each other, but then Gohan took off without a word after them, just in case it was some kind of trap. Krillin and Piccolo immediately followed suit. They all descended several moments later, wide-eyed at what they saw. Kind Cold was sprawled out on the ground in a pool of blood, obviously dead and in a gruesome way, with something that could have only been done with a sword. The explosion from Frieza's desperation blast had cleared all of the dead bodies of the mutilated soldiers, but there were still some traces of blood that could be seen by everyone. About 40 yards away, Trunks was sitting casually on a rock. He had the bottom of his boot firmly on the handle of his sword, the sword that was currently impaling Frieza right in the chest. The tyrant was trying in vain to move, but the more he did, the more Trunks subtly pushed the sword further down. Vegeta hesitated for a second, before eternal curiosity won. He was the only one who crossed the distance over to them. It was only when he was standing in front of Trunks and Frieza that he finally saw the true extent of the damage. Frieza's tail and his right leg had been sliced off completely, and his hands were shattered and destroyed. The tyrant looked positively incensed, shaking with his rage while he tried in vain to just get off the ground. But there was fear in his eyes, and Vegeta could barely believe it. Never in his life had he seen Frieza with that look in his eyes. The prince then glanced back at Trunks with suspicion as he wondered how a boy his age could have the power to strike fear into Frieza. I heard a story once, Trunks said, easily keeping Frieza pinned down while they both ignored his weak attempts to speak, that you were the one destined to kill him. Is that true? It took a few moments before Vegeta responded. He shook his head, and his jaw set as he looked away. It doesn't matter anymore. I had my chance, and I failed. You started this fight, so you deserve to finish it. He tortured my father almost his whole life. Hurt him right in front of me and I couldn't do a damn thing about it. In a different time and place, he managed to kill him. I would love to do this and end Frieza for good, Trunks admitted, a deep scowl on his face. Then do it. What the hell do you need from me? My fucking permission? Vegeta sneered, making Trunks bite back a smile. This wasn't his father, but at the same time, it was. Trunks looked back down at Frieza, schooling his features into indifference as he shrugged. Nah, I don't need anything from you, Vegeta. I just thought maybe you would want the chance to kill him. Like I said, it's your fight, so it's your kill. What if I don't finish it? Then you'll have to step in. If you don't finish this, then you're a damn fool. Maybe so, but at least I'm not in a pink shirt. Vegeta growled and opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Trunks roughly pulled out his sword from Frieza's midsection. The tyrant seemed to sputter to life, struggling to raise his head, but before Vegeta could even register the motion, Trunks already had him pinned back down. The prince flinched back a little, his eyes wide when he saw Trunks' boot firmly lodged into Frieza's throat. The The boy was applying brutal pressure, and they both heard things beginning to break underneath his boot. Trunks almost sneered in disgust down at Freeza. He would have given up everything he owned for another shot at the tyrant, the one who had killed him in a cheap shot from behind. But this version of Freeza wasn't as strong. In fact, this version was pathetic in comparison. Guess I'm a fool then, Trunks finally grumbled, extending his sword to Vegeta. The prince stared at the sword with an intensity that Trunks recognized all too well. He did want this. He wanted this more than he wanted to defeat Goku in battle. Vegeta looked up and made eye contact with Trunks, searching his eyes with fine-tuned scrutiny. Have we met before? No. Vegeta's eyes narrowed angrily. Don't lie to me. I'm not. I've only heard of you. Anyone who has been in space for as long as I have, has heard of you. Vegeta frowned in distrust, but he seemed to accept that. After some time of awkward silence between them, Trunks sighed as he silently chastised himself. He had wanted to provide his father with closure in this timeline, a small bit of the closure he had experienced in the altered timeline, but he was just being foolish. He had been so careful not to chance things in the past, and now here he was, being reckless and changing things already in this new timeline before Goku had even shown up. Alright, look, Trunks conceded. I shouldn't have asked you to do this. I wasn't thinking clearly. I'll just finish Freeza myself. I got it now, imbecile, Vegeta snapped, snatching the sword out of his son's hand. Stand aside. Trunks leaned away, though he kept his boot firmly on Frieza's throat to hold him in place. The tyrant was still writhing in pain, unable to move from Trunks' attack through his midsection. Vegeta flipped the sword over, grabbed it by the handle, and then aimed it down right over Frieza's face. Both he and Trunks were uncaring as Freeza attempted to beg for mercy through a mouthful of blood. As Vegeta pulled the sword up, Trunks hoped this small change wouldn't alter things too much in this timeline. For once, he didn't need to worry. Meanwhile, in another wrinkle of space and time, Bulma was at her computer, typing in a mad rush while someone very impatient was waiting on the other end of her headset. Well, the rough voice angrily demanded. Oh, would you just wait for once in your life, Mr. Lord of the Universe? Bulma snapped. I almost have it. Hurry the hell up, woman, I don't have time for your bullshit right now. Okay, I got it. Now, let's see. If you leave within the next 18 hours, you'll get here on time. Trunks said the androids would be here a week from today at 10 am. I know what the boy said. I was there when he said it, Vegeta sneered. He exhaled slowly, making static ruffle up on her end. There was silence for about 10 seconds, before he hesitantly asked, has Trunks? No. He hasn't come back yet, Bulma quietly answered, her eyes drifting to the time and date on her laptop. But I'll get in touch with you when he does. 18 hours, correct? Yeah, 18 hours should be okay. With that, Vegeta abruptly ended the connection. Bulma angrily pulled off the headset, letting it drop on her desk. She sighed, brushing some blue bangs out of her face while she tried not to think about the upcoming week. Her only hope was that Vegeta stood by his word and made it on time. Slowly, the heiress rotated her neck to crack it and relieve some stress, when someone roughly grabbed her shoulder from behind. Bulma shrieked in fright, before whirling around and finding herself face to face with Yamcha, who offered her a sheepish grin. What gives, Yamcha? I thought you might have been the androids. Bulma yelled, making him laugh. He was carrying a 6-month-old baby in one arm, a little boy with bright blue eyes and a black beanie cap on his head. The boy smiled at the sight of Bulma as Yamcha handed him over. You're about a week ahead of time, B. Besides, someone wanted their mom pretty bad. Well, who knows? Everything's changed so much since Trunks got here, maybe the date has changed too. Hey little guy, Bulma brightly said once she caught her breath. She reached out and took the baby from Yamcha's arms, and then turned back to her laptop while she sat him securely on her lap. Damn, she quietly said. Maybe I should have told him he had to leave in 12 hours, or maybe 8. You were talking to Vegeta? Yamcha asked, his friendly tone gone now. Yamcha, seriously, don't start. He just needed to know how much time he had left. We still need him to show up, you know. Yamcha shrugged with indifference, but his tone was icy as he said, I don't see why. We're all been training hard for over 3 years now. Goku has already ascended, and he hasn't come down with whatever that weird virus was. Raditz and Vegeta helped with that. Well, alright, fine, but listen. Goku is all we really need. Remember, we didn't even have those two in Trunks' timeline to fight. Yeah, but still, Yamcha. We can use all the help we can get. Well, at least make sure that the connection is secure. Remember what happened the last time someone hacked into Vegeta's scouter 2 years ago? This whole planet was almost destroyed. Yamcha snorted before mumbling, forget the androids, Vegeta's enemies are worse. I know, Bulma softly said, her eyes drifting back to the computer screen. Leaning down, she kissed her son gently on top of his head while the baby played with her headset. Hey, I have an idea, Yamcha brightly said. How about we forget about Vegeta, about the androids, about all this doom and gloom and do something on our own? Just us. Let's go out to dinner, right now. What do you say? That's all well and good, but what about the baby? We'll bring him with us. It'll be great. Hang on, I'll go see if I can get us a reservation. Alright, Bulma said with a small laugh. Maybe a day out would be good. Have to have a little fun before the next threat to the Earth, right kiddo? Okay, you can't tug on mommy's headset. You're going to break it. Bulma pulled the headset away from her little boy's hands, setting it aside. The boy reached out, giving a cry of frustration that she had taken his new toy away. When he couldn't reach it with his small hands, Bulma felt a wiggling in her lap as a brown tail emerged. Before she could pull the headset further away, her son had already snatched it up with his tail. He laughed in delight as he got his toy back in his small hands. "Man, I still have to get used to this extra limb of yours, kid," Bulma joked, looking her little boy over while he clumsily put the headset up to his ear, as though wanting to speak to his father. His tail was lashing happily by her leg, and she gently touched the soft fur. He looked just like her son from the future, except for the presence of his tail. Vegeta had won the battle when it came to that, and Bulma had won the naming battle, which was no small feat, and she had also gotten a son she had once thought impossible. It still boggled her mind how her Trunks had come to be. He certainly hadn't been planned, in any timeline, she supposed, but she wouldn't change a thing. Even though Vegeta had never seen the boy, and had shown no desire to do so, she still wouldn't take anything back. Plus, she had hoped that the prince would come around. After all, stranger things had happened over the last few years. But for now, all that mattered was that they got past the androids. They had already dealt with a couple of new, dangerous threats over the last few years, most of which had developed directly because of Vegeta's powerful position in the universe. And now they were going to be challenged again. She just hoped her friends could alter history one more time, for the better, and change how things would play out at the hands of the androids. Trunks had given them that fighting chance. And with Earth's group of special forces, one chance was all they ever needed. The NA/N just wanted to take a beat and thank those of you still reading for sticking with me through some long update times and some ugly writer's block. This story is by far the hardest thing I've ever written. You guys are a great group to write for, and I appreciate the support. Regarding a sequel, I'd be lying if I said I haven't seriously thought about one that covers this missing years gap in this alternate timeline I've created, focusing on Vegeta and Bulma. Needless to say, it'd be a whole different flavor to your typical 3-year fix, haha, darker, more action, etc. But, I also have ideas for 2 other new fics too, thinking of a Vegeta-centered FIC when he's around 17-ish working for Freeza, and thinking of a dark, gritty all-human, not school, or featuring a lot of the DBZ gang. All 3 would be lots and lots of fun to write. Anyways, I haven't decided on anything, but we'll see. Smiley face. Thanks again for reading. CH23 of 23. Want more thrilling stories? Subscribe to Infinite Novel and dive into infinite adventures.